Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. If you are a returning viewer, thank you so much for coming back. And if you're new here, welcome. My name is Francia, and on this channel, we do a little bit of everything, but lately I've been interested in true crime. So if you also are interested, I hope you hit your subscribe button and your notification bell so that you always know when I upload. Okay, so picture this. You live in this neighborhood across the street from this weird but kind of nice guy. It's a nice Friday morning. You just finished dropping off your kids at school and you just poured yourself a nice cup of coffee and you're about to sit down to enjoy that cup of coffee when you hear your doorbell. And because it's the 1980s, of course, you get up and go see who it is. And when you go to the door, it was the meter man, but he was not alone. With him was this guy who's wearing nothing but a dog collar, tells you that he just jumped from the second story of your nice neighbor's house and that he needs you to call the police. What's the vibe? What we doing? Let's get into it. Today we'll delve into the life and crimes of this monster whose story is both tragic and disturbing. He was an American serial killer whose criminal activities began in the late 1970s and lasted until 1988. During this period, he kidnapped, tortured, and murdered at least 6 young men. His victims were often vulnerable individuals, including runaways and those involved in the local gay scenes. His MO was particularly crazy, disturbing. He would lure his victims to his home, where he would hold them captive. He inflicted severe psychological and physical torture, recording many of his acts on a little notebook pad thingy, and he would take Polaroid pictures of his victims both before, during the torture, and after their death. With each victim, he became cynically more creative with his torturing ideas. Yeah. The details of his crimes are haunting, marked by a disturbing level of control and manipulation. How many times did I say disturbing? Who's counting? All right, who are we talking about? So this guy's name was Robert Andrew Berdella Jr. Robert was born on January 31st, 1949 in Cuyahoga Falls, I think I'm saying that right, Ohio. He was the elder by 7 years of 2 sons born to Robert Andrew Berdella Sr. and Mary Louise Berdella. His dad worked for the Ford Motor Company and his mom was a homemaker. Growing up in a strict household, Robert faced many challenges in his early life. His dad was a devout Roman Catholic, so the family went to Mass quite regularly, and both Robert and his brother took religious education courses. It was said that growing up, Robert was very intelligent, like a little bookworm, but he was not for the outside. He was not outdoorsy. He barely played outside, and he didn't have any friends like to come visit him or play with him because he was such a loner. Robert spent his time just painting like a little kid. Can you imagine just a little kid just sitting around? Anyways, that's what he did. He spent his time just painting, collecting coins and stamps, and participating in writing activities where he would exchange letters with people from many different countries. Oh my gosh, speaking of pen pals, I have a little bit of a story time. So, growing up in Haiti, it's not a whole lot going on. You don't have no electricity. It's not a whole lot going on. So we would get into different activities. So I participated in this pen pal situation. Now in Haiti, you basically write to this anonymous person for a while, and then there is like a time period that the writing, the exchanging of the letters would happen, and then at the end of it, there would be like a big meetup where you get to meet the person that you've been writing. And sometimes people end up dating. So I was like hoping that he was gonna be a little cutie pie, right? I had my hopes up because the letters were awesome. He was a great writer. His name was Cupid because you have to give fake names. So his fake name was Cupid, and he was killing it. I'm excited for the thing to end, for me to go to the meetup. Fast forward, thing ended, got to the meetup. I'm expecting homeboy to just like blow me away, and I got there. He was aesthetically unfortunate looking, very aesthetically unfortunate looking. And I was super duper skinny, so I don't think I did it for him either. And we just like we caught the vibes, and we just ended up having a great time. And then that was that. So yeah, that was my little pen pal story. I did not get a boyfriend. I did all this writing for nothing. But anyways, back to the story. Robert also had a speech delay, and he was severely nearsighted, so he wore some thick behind glasses from the time that he was 5 years old. Now, pair that with him being super smart and doing well in school, and we all know how much kids hate when other kids are smart. I don't know what it is with children, but they just so mean. Yeah, that put Robert at the very top of the list for bullying. So his social life was non-existent, like I said before. And on top of everything else that he had to deal with at school and in his social life, Robert had some health issues that he had to take medication for. He also was not very athletic compared to his little brother, so his dad would constantly compare the two of them, and he would talk down on Robert because, according to the dad, if you're not athletic, are you really a man, you know? Yeah, so he was just not very nice to Robert. He would always compare him, like I said, to his little brother. And like, his little brother was 7 years younger than him. I would be so upset, because why are you comparing him to me? You have two kids. They have two different personalities. They're into different things. I don't have to be him, and he doesn't have to be me. I wish I could say like, this is just way back when. They don't do that anymore, but there's a lot of parents that still do that, and it's so annoying. Don't do that. And then you would think that the little brother, being more athletic and seemingly being the dad's favorite, he would be spared. No, the dad physically and emotionally abused both of them. Robert was unfortunately sexually assaulted, but he never did tell anyone. He just kept that to himself. And by the time he reached puberty, he figured that he was a homosexual, which is also a secret that he kept for himself for several years. And I'm thinking, way back when, not as acceptable as it is today. That's number one. Number two, dad was not going to be okay with that. You know, like I said, he was a Catholic, grew up in a very strict household. Dad was not going to be okay with that. So he kept that to himself, and he even tried to like have a little girlfriend, but that didn't work out. By the time he reached his mid-teens, Robert had become a completely different person. He was extremely aggressive. He was rude and mean towards other people, especially towards women. Not sure why. I think I have an idea. I'll keep it to myself. He also developed an interest for cooking and in art. Sadly, Robert's life would take a turn for the worse, because on Christmas Day of 1965, when Robert was around 16 years old, his dad died of a heart attack at the age of 39. Oh, that's sad. Because what I've noticed is that even though those dads are very abusive and those little boys are hurt and tortured and messed up by them for the most part, they still love and need their dads. Shortly after Robert's dad died, Robert's mom, she went and she got herself a little boo thing, and she remarried. And Robert just didn't like this at all. Robert felt like his mother betrayed his dad because it was way too soon, and the mom was just not having it. The mom was like, honey, I got needs. And Robert just did not have a good time. It was said that Robert turned to his faith and he started praying and reading a lot, but after some time he just gave up and he completely turned his back on his religion, and he just became angry towards the good Lord, I would say. Happens to all of us, Robert, but most of us come back. We don't go where you went. Anyways, as a result, he became more and more withdrawn, and he just went back to that little boy that used to live this solo life, and he started those activities again, like painting, collecting the good old coins and stamps, and writing to those people in those foreign countries. Later on, Robert would say that his pen pals would send him a lot of foreign stuff like stamps, photographs, and historical icons, ancient cultures, architecture, etc. And it would have him develop an interest in art, photographs, and anything ancient or antique. I can never say that word. We're gonna stick with ancient. anything ancient, okay? He collected so much of these things that he was inspired later on to open his own ancient business called Bob's Bazaar. And the same year after his father's death and him being angry towards his mom and turning his back on his good old faith and becoming withdrawn and whatnot, Robert saw this film called The Collector, I believe it was called Collector or The Collector, I don't remember, which is about a deranged man who stalked a woman and abducted her because he found her to be very attractive. He held her captive in his basement and just treated her like she was some sort of a beautiful, pretty little object. After a few weeks, the woman became ill and she passed away despite all of the man's efforts to keep her alive. And Robert later said that that movie left a lasting impression on him, and it was almost like he was inspired by it. Sir, no. What? Robert was very smart though. He was so smart that while he was in high school, his grades were so good that he got put in an independent study program by the time he graduated from Cuyahoga Falls High School in 1967. Very smart dude. Very smart, very unsuspecting, very successful. Shortly after he graduated, he moved to Kansas City, where he enrolled in Kansas City Art Institute because he wanted to become a college professor. He did great during his first year, but by the second year, Robert got a little cuckoo. He got mixed up with the wrong crowd and started messing with and selling dope, drinking alcohol, and killing animals out here. When he was 19, Robert was arrested for selling meth to an undercover cop, and he would plead guilty to the meth charges and received a 5-year suspended sentence. Now, I didn't know what a suspended sentence was, okay? If you know already, good for you, whatever, but I didn't know, so I had to look it up. And if you're like me and you don't know what a suspended sentence is, so basically if you commit a crime, they charge you for said crime. Say they say you're gonna spend 2 years in prison, but prior to you starting to serve those 2 years, they put you on a probation situation, and during that time, if you do not violate the conditions of your probation and when your probation is over, you're free. But if you violate the conditions of said probation, then you are going to get put in jail right away and serve the time that they were suspending and the time for any new charges that you would get for breaking the conditions of the probation. Yeah, I'm going to law school because, I just ate that up. You know I did. In his case, he did violate the condition of his probation because 1 month after his arrest, he got arrested again for possession of the good old MJ and LSD. But those charges would end up being dropped because there was a lack of evidence. They failed to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he was in fact guilty of those charges. Like I said, lawyer. I am just a whole lawyer. Did you hear that? Beyond a reasonable doubt? What? Book me, okay? Hire me. In 1969, Robert decided that his art institute situation was not going to be a thing for him anymore because he made this beautiful work of art by killing and cooking a duck, and they did not accept it. Not only did they not accept it, they dared to criticize him very harshly, mind you. Yeah, the college administrators did not find his little presentation very artsy. So he was like, you know what? Y'all can't appreciate all this beautiful work of art, and y'all don't appreciate me and my talent. I'm out. Yeah. However will they replace you, Robert? Such a talented art student. So yeah, Robert dropped out. He ditched the college life. By the time Robert had gotten into college, though, he was living as an openly gay man. After he dropped out, he decided to stay in Kansas City and bought a house, and he was living his best gay life. He started spending a lot of his free time with prostitutes and drug addicts, petty criminals, and runaways. He would try to say that he is only friends with these people because he is trying to help them turn their lives around. Trying to get them to kick their little addiction. Oh, such a great Samaritan. Sir, who is helping you kick yours? Who is helping you kick yours? Yeah. No. He was such a great Samaritan that he would tell his neighbors that he felt like he was a great foster parent to many of the youths. A foster parent? You're barely in your 20s and you're just as messed up as them, if not more. So come again. The reality was, though, that Robert was a little bit creepy, and people his own age, they figured him out, and so they didn't really want much to do with him. So he had no choice but to befriend the only people that he could fool, the young ones. And despite his claims of wanting to help them, he was actually having sex with them because he would find a way to manipulate them and gain control over them by lending them money, allowing them to live rent-free in his house for long periods of time, which probably made them feel indebted to him. And when he would then ask them for sexual favors, they would probably feel like they didn't have a choice because he had been so good and so kind to them, That was the game that he played. Miss me with the BS, talking about such a good foster parent. I'm helping them to kink their addiction. Who's helping you kink yours? Ugh. While he was living this whole other lifestyle, to his neighbors, Robert appeared to be just a flamboyant yet very helpful person. Robert became involved with his neighborhood's crime prevention, and he would help his neighbors, put on a watch patrol situation and trying to tell them that he wanted to keep the neighborhood crime free. He would even do some volunteer work at fundraising events for local television. Robert was John Wayne Gacy all over again. Robert was also working as a short order cook for many different restaurants in Kansas City, and he would also sell ancient stuff as a side hustle. It wouldn't be long before Robert's cooking career and an antiques business became successful. He was promoted to a senior cook at many renowned restaurants in Kansas City. He even joined a local chefs association and helped establish a training program for aspiring chefs at a local community college. He was working, he was giving back, he was just fooling everybody, Around that same time, he also put a lot of attention towards his own business, and in 1981, he had established several contract agreements with both national and international contact for his antique business, and he would later quit his job as a chef to fully focus on that. Which brings us back to Bob's Bizarre Bazaar. In 1982, he rented his own booth at a Westport flea market where he would sell his primitive art, jewelry, and all the antique stuff that he had collected over the years. Sometimes he would make enough money, and other times he would not make enough to cover expenses, so he would then resort to stealing items to sell at his booth and renting space out of his house to make a little extra cha-ching so he could situate himself. While working at the flea market, Robert met Paul Howell, who had a booth right next to his. They became acquainted, and later on Robert met Paul's son Jerry. It was said that Jerry and his friends would make fun of Robert because he was overtly homosexual, and then Robert would later say that Jerry confided in him that he and his friends were actual sex workers, or male prostitutes, if you will. So Robert remained friends with the family and just promised to help out in any way he can if Jerry ever needed anything, any assistance, anything. I'm here for you, Jerry. Just call me for anything. And sadly, with that offer, Jerry would then become Robert's very first known victim. It is believed that Robert claimed his first victim on July 5th of 1984. So remember when I said earlier that he became friends with the Howell family and just promised to be there for their son Jerry for whatever he may need, or if he had any encounter with the law, because Robert was an expert with the law. Well, he made good on this promise one day by volunteering to take Jerry to a dance contest in a nearby city. On the way there, he kept giving the boy alcohol to try and get him drunk, and when he wasn't drunk enough, he had some pills like diazepam and acipromycin until he finally lost consciousness, and then Robert just turned around and went back to his house. Now, if you know anything about these medications, they're controlled substances and they're not supposed to be mixed with alcohol when you're on them, but I don't think Robert was trying to be safe here. How was he getting his hands on controlled substances? You need a prescription, or was that not a thing in the 70s? That probably was not a thing in the 70s. But benzos, though? I thought it'd be more like pain pills. So when he got to his house, he drugged him some more and then he bound him to his bed. He then proceeded to repeatedly drug him, torture him, and grape him and violate him with objects. Just the whole time, the poor little boy was just so confused because he thought they were friends. He thought they were friends, like he was a good friends with his family. He was just so confused the whole time. He was just asking him, why are you doing this to me? Just please let me go. And the creep just ignored him and just continued to torture him until the boy passed away. He died from asphyxiation from being gagged and possibly in his own vomit. That's so sad. The psycho, once he realized that the boy was dead, he claimed, or he wasn't breathing, he claimed that he tried to perform CPR, but I guess that didn't work. Or did he really even try? No, I think he may have tried, because remember the beautiful, wonderful movie that inspired him? The perpetrator did not want the lady to die, so I don't think that Robert wanted his captive to die. So I think he did try to perform CPR, and when that didn't work, he took the boy's body to his basement, where he then made several cuts into his major arteries and veins and whatnot and suspended him overnight so that the blood and fluids could drain out of his body. And then the next day he dismembered the boy, put the pieces in trash bags and placed the trash bags around the curb to be picked up. No one would ever know. No one would ever know that they're picking up body parts. And after he was done with his little activity, he would go to his little notepad where he would detail everything. He would take pictures, like I said before, he hurt them during the hurting process after their dad, like everything. Jerry's family reported him missing, and his dad always suspected that Robert had something to do with the disappearance of his son, but he didn't have enough evidence to prove anything. So sad. And when Robert was questioned, he always claimed that he did take Jerry to the dance as promised, but they went their separate ways after he dropped him off and he never saw him again. Robert's next victim was 20-year-old Robert Sheldon. On April 10th of 1985, Sheldon came to Robert's house asking if he could stay at his house for a short period of time. Sheldon used to rent from Robert before, so Robert knew he was like a responsible tenant, like he took care of his rent, but he still found him to be some sort of an inconvenience to him because he simply just was not physically attracted to Sheldon. However, that did not stop Robert from torturing Sheldon. On April 12th, just 2 days after Sheldon got there, he drugged him and held him captive because Robert got home from work one day and Sheldon was drunk, and he just didn't like that. Robert would later say that he didn't really have anything against Sheldon, but he felt like he could use Sheldon to release some frustration that he had towards other people. What? You ain't never heard of a conversation with those people that frustrate you, or you scream, or you cry, or you pray? I don't know. You don't have a hobby that you could do to like distract you or something? What? Oh, Lordy. So with that being said, he was a lot more cruel with Sheldon than he was with his first victim. He held him captive for about 3 days, during which time he swabbed his eyes with drain cleaner. Ouch. Oh my gosh. He poked his fingers with needles. He bound his wrists with piano wire, which can cause permanent damage to the nerves in his hands. And then he put caulking material in his ears so that he wouldn't be able to hear. He didn't want him to see or hear anything. What a sick, sick man. While he had Sheldon down there, a person came to do some roofing work in his house. He figured, instead of, hide the boy, or I don't know, just anything other than what he did, he figured he would hurry up and unalive the boy before he let the person in his house to do the work. Oh my gosh. And after they left, he went back, dissected the boy's body, repeated the same process of putting the pieces in trash bags and putting the trash bags around the curb to be picked up, except this time, for whatever reason, he decapitated Sheldon, put his head in a freezer, and then later buried the head in his backyard. I don't know. I was like, why did he feel the need to keep the head for this one? Is it because this one lasted for 3 days? I don't know. Comment below if you have an idea. The following June, there's this boy named Mark Wallace who wasn't a stranger to Robert because he had previously helped him with some yard work. Robert found him hiding in his shed because of a severe thunderstorm that Wallace was afraid of. So, being the good little neighbor that Robert is, he invited Wallace inside his house, shelter from the storm. He noticed that Wallace was a little bit shaken up by the situation, so he offered to give him some medications that would help him calm down and relax, right? So Wallace agreed, and Robert injected him with medication, and next thing you know, he was his captive. He took him to the second floor, held him there for like a day, during which time he tortured him. He hooked up alligator clips to his nipples so that he could shock him until the boy would become unconscious. So Mark Wallace ended up dying from a combination of the drugs, the gag, and a lack of oxygen. And then he went in his little notebook and wrote down his time of death. Ugh, Lord Jesus, what a psycho. On September 26, 1985, Robert got a call from another one of his acquaintances, a guy named James Ferris. He had called Robert to ask if he could stay at his house for a short period of time. And of course, Robert said yes, just excited because he knew what he was about to do to Ferris. It's like his victims were coming to him. So according to Robert, everything that he had previously done with his first 3 victims were not intentional. He said the first person that he intentionally inflicted pain upon was Ferris. Sir, those other ones were accidental? You accidentally hooked up alligator clips to someone's nipples and shocked them? What are you talking about? Oh my goodness. Just like the others, he brought Ferris into his home, drugged him, and then he tied him to his bed and proceeded to constantly torture him for about 27 hours. He would shock him like in his shoulders and his testicles, his men parts, for up to 5 minutes each instance. Do you understand how long 5 minutes is when you're in pain? I just feel like some people, when you get them, you should just literally inflict the same pain that they inflicted on their victim. Somebody should have hooked him up to a machine and send electricity to his balls so he could experience that same wonderful feeling. Because what is wrong with you? He would poke him with needles to the guy's neck, his back, and his genitals. Again, somebody should have poked his balls when they got him. The boy was in so much pain that he became delirious, but Robert didn't even care. He continued to physically and sexually assault him until the boy's body just went flaccid. He put in his little notebook that Ferris was unable to sit up for more than 10 to 15 seconds. And then the next entry was very delayed breathing. And in the next entry, he was dead. Oh my gosh. Robert's next victim was a 23-year-old married man who, along with his wife, had lived with Robert before. They hadn't seen each other for a while after they had moved out for the last time, until they ran into each other a couple of years later, and Robert invited Todd Stoops to his house with the promise of lunch, sex, and $13 for Todd's drug fix. He would hold Todd captive for about 2 weeks. That was the longest one yet. And during those 2 weeks, he gradually terrorized him. He tried something different with him because, according to Robert, he was extremely attracted to Todd and wanted to make him a little bit more cooperative. He wanted Todd to be his sex slave. He would proceed to shock him through his eyeballs to blind him. He would dump drain cleaner into his voice box so that he would silence him if he tried to scream for help. He wouldn't feed him anything. He then proceeded to put his fist up the man's booty hole, which completely destroyed his anal cavity. I'm sorry about the graphic nature of this. His outer sphincter was no more. He just completely destroyed his anal wall, which then caused extreme bleeding and just stuff to just be falling out of the guy. And by the end of the second week, He tried to feed him some soup and ice cream, but it was too late. Sir, what are you doing? What is soup and ice cream supposed to do for the man's booty hole? He can't keep anything down. You just, you know what? Mm-mm. Oh my gosh. He then went to his little note and noted, unable to breathe in a sitting position. Duh. Oh my gosh. And on July 1st of 1986, Todd passed away from septic shock due to his booty hole being ruptured. In 1987, Robert befriended 20-year-old Larry Pearson. Larry would end up lasting about 6 weeks. Wow. Because he was very cooperative and he ended up gaining Robert's trust. So on June 23rd, Robert and Larry watched a movie together. They had lunch that day and went on a drive together. And that evening, Robert got Larry drunk and drugged him and moved him to the basement, where he bound his hands above his head and poured drain cleaner into his voice box again to keep him quiet. After shocking him and breaking several bones in his hand, Robert then decided that Larry had finally earned his trust, and to reward him, he moved Larry from the basement to the second floor, and he told him that if he continued to behave like this, he would not inflict as much pain on him as he did before while he was in the basement. So Larry just continued to do the best that he could to continue to cooperate and not piss off Robert, so that he wouldn't have to go back down to the basement. But after week 6 of being in this miserable, painful situation, Larry just couldn't do it anymore. And during a sexual encounter, he ended up biting Robert's penile situation, which you can only imagine how angry that made Robert. It was so bad that he knew that he needed medical attention, but prior to him going to the hospital, he ended up unaliving Larry and then went to the hospital. After he returned from the hospital, he dismembered his body, stored the head in the freezer, and later on buried it in the backyard. It was also said that he removed the teeth from the skull. Yeah, because how dare you bite me? As I was reading this, I was like, I would have so many questions if I was at that hospital, because teeth mark on your penile, like what were you involved in? I have so many questions. Interesting. The end of Robert's reign of terror would come in April of 1988, when one of his intended victims managed to escape and alert the authorities. This led to a police investigation during which officers discovered evidence of his heinous acts. Robert was arrested and later confessed to his crimes, providing chilling details about his methods and motivations. So what had happened was, on March 29 of 1988, Robert got a hold of 22-year-old male prostitute Christopher Bryson. He lured him in his house with the promise of money for sex. As soon as he got there, he knocked the boy unconscious with an iron bar. Then he bound him to his bed and proceeded to abuse and torture him, as he did with his previous victims. Except with Bryson, he swabbed his eyes with ammonia. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I don't think you understand the level of pain. Even like the smell of it, or a small amount, can cause extreme burning and irritation to the eye. So imagine it being swabbed into your eyes. Oh my gosh. He wanted to blind him. He basically just wanted him to go blind, and then he proceeded to tell the boy, quote, "The only things you need to worry about are you, me, and this house," end quote. What? He then proceeded to tell Bryson that although he was willing to ease up on some of the abuse and torture that he was putting him through, he was not going to negotiate on the sexual abuse aspect of the situation. And then he wrapped up this whole little conversation by telling him, quote, "I have gotten this far with other people before, and they're dead now because of mistakes they made," end quote. Yeah, Robert, because of mistakes they made. Because, like, who doesn't want to be tortured and killed? What was wrong with this guy? The fork? On day 3 of his capture, Bryson had gotten Robert to trust him enough to convince him to tie his hand in front of him instead of above his head, because he told him that he was restricting blood flow to his arms. And Robert is going to need Bryson's arms to perform those, situation on him. So you don't want to restrict blood flow. He also convinced Robert to leave a TV remote and to leave a TV in the room with the control placed between his legs when Robert would be out of the room. Bryson would later say that all he thought about was escaping. He just wanted to be free. I mean, who wouldn't? Who wouldn't? You're being held by this monster who's doing all these heinous things to you. Of course, all you're going to think about is getting away from the bastard. The following day, Bryson managed to break free from his restraints by using a book of matches that Robert had forgotten before he left for work. So Bryson used that little book of matches to burn through his restraints and freed himself, which brings us back to the very beginning. Wearing nothing but a dog collar, Bryson managed to escape from the house by jumping from the second floor window. Breaking his foot in the process, he ran down the street, flagged down the meter man, who went to his next house and asked the owner to call the police, which they did, and the police arrived within minutes. Thank God. Oh my goodness. When they questioned him, Bryson told the police that he had been kidnapped by Robert, who had raped and tortured him for 4 days before he escaped and jumped out the second floor of his house. He explained to them in detail what he endured at Robert's hands during the time that he was captured. Bryson also told police that Robert had shown him Polaroid pictures of other men who appeared to be dead, and told them that Robert had threatened him that he would never leave his house, and that if he ever became annoying or if he threatened to leave, he would torture him even more or just unalive him. While he was talking, police was also noting that his eyes were red and swollen. They saw a whole bunch of scars across his body. They took notice of the dog collar and like his broken foot and everything. After that, they took Bryson to the hospital. Some of the officers took Bryson to the hospital, and some of them stayed back to wait for Robert to return. That afternoon, when Robert returned home from work, police was waiting for him, like I said. They asked him for identification to confirm who he was, which he provided, and he also confirmed that that was in fact his house. He was arrested and charged with the sexual assault of Christopher Bryson. When officers asked him if they could go inside his house for a little look-see, he told them, I don't think that's a good idea. And then he asked for a lawyer. So then they took him down to the county jail and they began to work on a search warrant. Thankfully, they ended up getting that search warrant that same day, and they were able to get inside of his house, okay? And when they got in there, boy, did they find stuff. They found a lot of evidence that corroborated Bryson's story. The second floor where Bryson said he was held, they found the burnt ropes. They found the electrical transformer plugged into the wall. They found the wires leading to the bed. There was a tray that had syringes, bottles of medication, prescription drugs, swabs, and eye drops. Also next to the bed, there was ropes of different lengths, leather belts. They also noted that the restraints in the bed were a little bit worn out, meaning that they had been used over and over again, and or that the victims had tried to manipulate themselves out of the rope, so they looked a little worn out. They also found a skull, a human skull, in a closet on the second floor, and a partially decomposed human head in the backyard. There were several human vertebrae in the hallway, and they found the teeth that he had removed from Larry. They found those in 2 envelopes. They found a chainsaw with blood stains, human flesh, and pubic hair on it. To the naked eye, they couldn't see much, but when they did their little light testing, there was blood stains all over the basement. They also found over 300 Polaroid pictures of different men before and after their death, and some of them were taken while they were being tortured. They found the little notebook where he logged everything. With all that information, police decided to put together a task force to try and solve this case. Because even with all that evidence that they found, it was still going to be very difficult for prosecutors because they did not have a body. Like I said, the lawyer in me telling you, when you don't have a body, you have your work cut out for you. Even though they found things in his house that belonged to Jerry Howell and James Ferris, and their pictures was in that Polaroid stack, Robert repeatedly denied having had anything to do with their disappearance. Detectives continued their investigation, and they were able to trace their search back to a young man who used to be one of Robert's tenants. He told police that he, along with several other young men, used to stay with Robert in the early 1980s, and that Robert had a bad habit of drugging his tenants and forcing himself on them without their consent. He also told police that a lot of people were reluctant, like a lot of the male prostitutes and addicts, they were reluctant to engage with Robert because there was rumors of him unaliving a little boy named Jerry Howell in 1984. On top of all of that, that same dude was able to identify by name 3 people from those Polaroid pictures. And then police also was able to find out that Robert had filed an assault complaint at a hospital because somebody by the name of Larry Pearson had bitten his penile situation during oral sex, and he had to get treatment for a serious laceration. So he went to the hospital and gave details. That wasn't very smart. Additionally, when following up on Larry's former employer, detectives found out that he was a reliable employee until he suddenly stopped coming to work on April 1st of 1985. Connections. Now, I'm not sure if this is legal or not, or if this was a thing, because there was some of the pictures where Robert had also photographed himself, not his face though, but some of his body parts. Detectives had asked him to take nude pictures so that they could try to recreate those images to see if those were in fact Robert's body parts. He declined, of course, but I just wasn't sure if that was a thing. That felt a little weird. They also asked him to provide them with a handwriting sample so that they could try and match the one from the little notebook. He also refused to do that. Homeboy was like, absolutely not. I'm not stupid. I'm not about to help you in your little investigation by, showing you what my handwriting looks like. No, thank you. What do you think this is? He was sentenced to 6 months in jail for contempt of court. At first, they had charged him with 1 count of restraint, 1 count of assault, and 7 counts of sodomy because of what they had found so far in his house as they were investigating. But then in late April, the skull that they had found in his closet came back to be that of Robert Sheldon. They were also able to confirm through dental records that the other skull found in his backyard was that of Larry Pearson. So then Robert was formally charged with the murder by dismemberment of Larry Pearson. Robert was formally indicted on July 22nd of 1988 for the murder of Larry Pearson, and in the following month he pled guilty to the first-degree murder charges and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He was also charged and convicted for Christopher Bryson. Robert maintained his innocence when it came to the other 5 victims, but he would later change his mind and confess to the torture and death of the remainder 5 victims to avoid the death penalty. He told investigators in details what he did to each one of them. He even went as far as breaking down some of his abbreviations from the little notebook. Like DC, for example, referred to drain cleaner, so on and so forth. And he provided investigators with all of their names. And after he was done, detectives then realized that their search for their bodies has been so unsuccessful because of the manner in which he disposed of them. After his little confession was over, Robert was sentenced to 5 consecutive lives in prison without the possibility of parole. Later on in an interview, Robert tried to convey to the public that he was a sensitive citizen who had simply made mistakes by unaliving all these people. Yeah, right. Now, I don't know if there is any truth to it, but Robert wrote to different ministers and also filed several complaints with the prison officials that he was not getting his blood pressure medication that the prison knew that he needed. Oops. On October 8th, 1992, about 4 years into Robert's incarceration, he complained of chest pains and they took him to the infirmary. They then determined that his heart was unstable, probably was having a heart attack. They transferred him to a hospital. He was pronounced dead from a heart attack. Robert was 43 years old. I mean, I would say I'm sad, but am I really? And I wouldn't be the only one, because when they informed the judge from his trial, he responded, quote, "Couldn't have happened to a nicer guy," end quote. Like I said, can't say I'm sad. It was said that Robert was diagnosed with depressive personality disorder and that he was a known sexual sadist who found pleasure and satisfaction in humiliating and torturing his victims. But I'm not sure if this diagnosis was made before or after his death, because it wasn't anywhere in his history or anything like that. So somebody probably decided to study him post-mortem to see what was causing homeboy to do all that stuff. Because, I'm usually very angry because I'm like, who let him out? He was mentally ill and it would just let him roam the street. But I don't think that was a known fact when he was alive. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the story of Robert Andrew Berdella Jr. It's a very sad situation overall, because some of these people, you really can't see them coming at times. Like I said, he reminded me of John Wayne Gacy, because he was, for the most part, successful doing his thing, working, and then his side hustle was unaliving people and torturing them. Anyways, that is all that I have for you guys today. Let me know what you think down below in the comment section. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and I will see you guys in my next one. But until then, I hope to see you in the comment section. Bye.